Welcome to Lunch with the Lord. I'm Pastor Mark. We're in Judges chapter 3. And we're going to be starting in verse 20 this lesson. But before we begin, Jeremiah 15:16, thy words were found, and I did eat them, and thy word was unto me the joy and the rejoicing of my heart. Now, last lesson we were looking at Ehud going to meet Eglon, presenting this gift, and then he turns around and tells the people that were with him to go on back home, and he travels back to the city of palm trees around Jericho, where Eglon was, and for this private meeting with Eglon. Now let's continue on in verse 20. Let's read verses 20 to 23, and it says here, and Ehud came unto him, and he was sitting in a summer parlor, which he had for himself alone. And Ehud said, I have a message from God unto you. And he arose out of his seat. And Ehud put forth his left hand, and took the dagger from his right thigh, and thrust it into his belly. And the haft also went in after the blade, and the fat closed upon the blade, so that he could not draw the dagger out of his belly, and the dirt came out. Now, it says here that he went to the summer parlor. Now, this could be either a room on the roof, or it could be an attached room that leads out to a garden or under a tree. Now, we have to remember that this scene is taking place in the Jordan Valley, which is about 1,000 feet below sea level, which makes this area one of the hottest areas in the world. Now, it says here that Ehud says to Eglon, I have a message from God for you. Now, it may mean that Ehud implies that he had a divine message, maybe from some kind of vision or a dream to give to Ehud. So it's possible that Ehud comes back and says, you know what, basically, as we were heading home, God gave me a message for you, and that's why I turned around and came back. So it's kind of implying that Ehud has this message, special message from God that for Eglon. And in verse 20, the Bible says that he, meaning Eglon, arose out of his seat. Probably the reason why he did this is to be reverent towards this message that Ehud is going to give to him. So he's arising out of his seat, possibly to receive this message from God. Now, verses 21 and 22, Ehud now applies the dagger and kills Eglon. But this is more about God delivering judgment upon Eglon. When God's people cried unto him, Eglon's rule over the Jews was over. This is what you have to understand. In the book of Judges, when the children of Israel had enough of the oppression and they cried unto God, God delivered them. The time of Israel's oppression had nothing to do with their enemy. It had everything to do with their crying out to God. Now, let's read verses 24 and 25. And it says here, when he was gone out, his servants came. And when they saw that, behold, the doors of the parlor were locked, they said, surely he covers his feet in his summer chamber. And they tarried till they were ashamed. And behold, he opened not the doors of the parlor. Therefore, they took a key and they opened up the doors. And behold, their Lord was fallen down dead on the earth. Now, it says here in verse 24, they thought that he covers his feet. Now, I can't agree with many scholars that they say that what it means to cover the feet is basically he's going to the bathroom. Now, the same phrase, covering his feet, is also used in 1 Samuel chapter 24 and verse 3, where Saul goes into a cave, he covers his feet, and he comes out. And I'm telling you, a lot of commentators believe that what it means is he went into the cave to go to the bathroom and he came out. But as you know, David and his men were hiding in the cave. And when Saul goes in to cover his feet, I can't believe, there's no way, I can't believe a person like Saul would not be able to hear David come to him and not feel David cutting off his part of his skirt while he's going to the bathroom. No, I don't know. I'm sorry. I can't believe that. It's got to mean where he's taking a nap. Covering his feet means to take a nap, not to go to the bathroom. If Eglon was truly going to the bathroom, as some scholars believe, then it means that the bathroom was actually inside his chamber. As far as I know, they didn't have bathrooms in houses back then. And being they were in the Jordan Valley, and it's very it's very hot there. Can you imagine what Eglon's summer parlor would smell like? So no, when it says here covering his feet, it doesn't mean he's going to the bathroom. It means he's taking a nap. And same way with Saul. In 1 Samuel 24, Saul was not going into the cave to go to the bathroom. He was going there to take a nap. I'm convinced, again, both these instances mean they're doing a little siesta here. Now, verses 26 through 30, and it says here, and Ehud escaped while they tarried, and passed beyond the quarries, and escaped unto Syriath. And it came to pass when he was come, that he blew a trumpet in the mountains of Ephraim, and the children of Israel went down with him from the mount, and he before them. And he said unto them, follow after me, for the Lord has delivered your enemies, the Moabites, into your hand. And they went down after him, and took the fords of Jordan toward Moab, and suffered not a man to pass over. And they slew of Moab at that time 10,000 men, all lusty, and all men of valor, and there escaped not a man. So Moab was subdued that day under the hand of Israel, and the land had rest for 80 years. Now, Ehud was able to escape while the king's guards were waiting. He goes to the mountain of Ephraim, and he calls the troops together. Ehud goes for the fords of Jordan first in order to cut off Eglon's army from escaping. Now, the fords were basically, it was a part of the Jordan River where it was very low. The water was low, and you could cross over by foot fairly easy. So Ehud takes his army and goes there first, cuts off any escape across the Jordan River. Not only did they get the fords first, but Ehud's army was able to kill Eglon's army and let none escape. Again, God gave the victory to a bunch of men who were quickly called together, and they had the victory over 10,000 men of valor. Again, this is the work of God. This is what God does. God uses those things. God uses the things that man would not use to do great things, and so he calls this ragtag group, this army, this how can I say, this quickly put together army to defeat Eglon's soldiers. Ehud said that God had delivered them. When he was on the mountain, he says, what? God has delivered. It means when Ehud said that, it means it was already done. They hadn't fought yet. But Ehud says, God has delivered them into your hands. Now, every preacher should preach from a position of already being victorious. We are victorious through Christ's work on the cross. We are not losers in this battle of life. We are more than conquerors through Christ. Now, we're going to go to 2 Peter chapter 1. 2 Peter chapter 1, we're going to look at verses 3 and 4. 2 Peter 1, verses 3 and 4, and it says here, according as his divine power, what? Has given unto us all things that pertain to life and godliness, through the knowledge of him that has called us to glory and virtue. It says here, he has given. This is perfect tense. The Greek here is perfect tense. It means it has already been given. And it says here, he has given all things, meaning not some things, but God has already given each Christian all things that pertain to life and godliness. God has given, listen, when you got saved, God had already given you everything you need in this life to live this life unto God. And verse 4 says, whereby are given unto us exceeding great and precious promises, that by these promises you might be partakers of the divine nature, having escaped the corruption that is in the world through lust. So listen, in verse 4 again, another perfect tense. He says here, whereby are given unto us. They've already been given. Listen, God's already given to us everything we need to live in this life of faith, this world that we live in, surrounded by sin and temptation. God has given us all things we need. Because of these exceeding great and precious promises, we can escape the corruption that is in the world through lust. Listen, don't live as if Jesus is still struggling with the devil. The battle is over. Jesus won, and you stand on the side of victory. We are not on the losing side. We're on the victorious side. Ehud said to them, come, God has delivered us, that Eglon, into our hands. He has delivered. And a lot of Christians don't live a victorious life. They don't live as if they're already on the victorious side. They live a defeated life, submitted to the pressures of this life, submitted to the sins of this world, submitted to their sinful nature. They don't live the victorious life. No, we need to live as those who are already victorious. God has already given to us all things that pertain to life and godliness. He's already given them to us. In verse 30 of Judges, let me get back to Judges here. In verse 30, it says here, so Moab was subdued that day under the hand of Israel, and the land had rest for 80 years. So it was that with Moab, their usefulness, Moab's usefulness to God's purpose, was over when Israel cried unto God. Their time of being rulers over Israel was determined completely upon Israel's relationship with God. Listen, their rulership, Moab's rulership over Israel, had nothing to do with them. Had nothing to do with them. It had everything to do with the Israelites. When they cried, God delivered. When they cried unto God, that's when God delivered. The time span of their oppression was determined by Israel, not by their oppressors. The rulers of this world think that they are in control of their reign, when in fact, God only is the one who determines when someone comes to power and when that power is taken from them. In Daniel chapter 2 and verse 21, the Bible says that God removes kings and God sets up kings. Regardless of whether we like our rulers or not, we can rest knowing that ultimately God is in control. God is in control of the rulers of our country and the rulers of the other countries. God sets them up. God takes them down. It's not determined by people voting. It's not determined by this and that and the other thing. It's determined by God. God sets them up. God moves upon the hearts of the people. God puts in control who he wants. Now, verse 31 says, and after him, meaning after Ehud, after him was Shamgar, the son of Anath, which slew of the Philistines 600 men with an ox goad. And he also delivered Israel. Now, Shamgar here now is our third judge, and it is not known what tribe or what family that he came from. His name means name of a stranger. And scholars believe that his name is not a Jewish name. Now, scholars are not even sure if what he did fits in the time of history between Ehud and Deborah in chapter 4. But the fact that Deborah does mention him in chapter 5 and verse 6 in her song does make his actions to have taken place sometime before Deborah. Again, was it what Shamgar did, was it really between Ehud and Deborah, or was it sometime before Ehud, but it was just placed here at this time? We don't know. Now, it seems that he was inspired to do this, and he took part. He just took the closest thing that was to him as a weapon. Now, how long his deliverance lasted is not known. But with Shamgar, the most important issue is not Shamgar himself, but the most important thing about Shamgar's deliverance is his ox goad. Again, we have another instance where God uses a most unlikely thing to deliver the children of Israel. Yeah, God didn't, some special guns or whatever. They didn't have guns back then. But no, God uses an ox goad. As Shamgar uses ox goad. The most important thing, in a sense, isn't Shamgar. It's the ox goad. God doesn't need fancy gimmicks or modern technology or sophisticated mission organizations to get his work done. God just uses people that will preach his word in truth. and in simplicity. The method, listen, the method is not important. The message is. Remember that. The method is not important. The message is what's important. It is the preaching of the gospel that is the power of God that results in a person's salvation. It's not the method of the gospel that results in salvation. It's the preaching of the gospel that results in people getting saved. In this way, God is the one who gets the glory. God gets the glory. Again, you got a deformed man in Ehud. You've got Shamgar who uses an ox goad. And upcoming here in the next number of lessons, you're going to have an insecure man in Gideon using clay pots and candles to defeat a whole army. I'm telling you, this is all about God. It's all about God and his glory. And it's all about God giving deliverance to unlikely people using unlikely weapons. All right, we're going to continue in chapter 4 next lesson. But until then, walk with the Lord. I know he walks with you.